a Lannister always pays his debts. For 8 seasons, House Lannister dominated Game of Thrones as the wealthiest, most powerful family in Westeros. Yet, by the series finale, their golden legacy lay in ruins. Their patriarch dead, their wealth depleted, their power broken. Today, I'm breaking down the 8 crucial factors that led to the fall of House Lannister, the fatal flaws, critical mistakes, and pivotal moments that transformed them from the undisputed rulers of the Seven Kingdoms to a diminished house fighting for survival. I've analyzed every scheme, every battle, and every betrayal to bring you the definitive explanation of how the mighty lions of Casterly Rock lost their roar. So grab your goblet of Arbor Gold and prepare to witness how even the richest house in Westeros couldn't escape the consequences of their actions. Tywin's fatal parenting. Any man who must say, "I am the king," is no true king. Tywin Lannister's approach to parenting laid the foundation for his house's eventual collapse, creating deep dysfunction that would ultimately tear his family apart. Tywin Lannister was a political mastermind who restored House Lannister's power after his father nearly destroyed it. But his brilliance as a strategist was matched only by his failure as a father. He raised 3 children who, in different ways, internalized his worst qualities while rejecting his vision for their future. What made Tywin's parenting so destructive was his inability to see his children as individuals rather than extensions of himself and his legacy. He forced Cersei into a political marriage while dismissing her political instincts. He refused to acknowledge Jaime's lack of interest in ruling Casterly Rock, and most fatally, he rejected Tyrion entirely due to his dwarfism and his mother's death in childbirth. The consequences of this parenting approach became clear after Tywin's death. Cersei, taught that power was everything but never properly trained to wield it, made catastrophic decisions like arming the Faith Militant. Jaime, caught between his father's expectations and his own moral code, struggled to define himself beyond being the Kingslayer. And Tyrion, whose intelligence matched his father's but who was denied any legitimate role, ultimately sided with Daenerys Targaryen against his own family. Tywin's most significant blind spot was his refusal to acknowledge Tyrion's capabilities. As Tyrion tells him before shooting him with a crossbow, "All my life, you've wanted me dead." By rejecting his most politically talented child, Tywin not only created his own killer, but deprived House Lannister of the person most capable of continuing his legacy of cunning leadership. The irony of Tywin's life is that his obsession with family legacy ultimately destroyed that legacy. As he tells Jaime, "It's the family name that lives on. It's all that lives on." Yet his treatment of his children created the very conditions that would lead to House Lannister's downfall. By trying to control them rather than nurture their strengths, he planted the seeds for the family's destruction. Tywin's death on the Privy, an undignified end for a man obsessed with dignity, marks the beginning of House Lannister's rapid decline. Without his strategic genius and iron control, the flaws in his children that he had either created or failed to correct would soon lead to catastrophic consequences for their house. The Mountain's brutality. "If you ever call me sister again, I'll have the Mountain crush you until there's nothing left." Gregor Clegane, known as the Mountain, served as House Lannister's instrument of terror, but his excessive brutality created enemies that would eventually contribute to the family's downfall. The Mountain first demonstrates his savagery during the sack of King's Landing, when he murders Princess Elia Martell and her children on Tywin's orders. This single act creates a multi-generational blood feud with House Martell that eventually leads Dorne to ally with Daenerys Targaryen against the Lannisters. What makes the Mountain particularly significant to the Lannisters' fall is how he embodies their approach to power, brutal, direct, and without concern for moral consequences. As Tywin's enforcer, he carries out atrocities like the torture at Harrenhal, burning the Riverlands, and executing prisoners. Each of these actions wins short-term victories while creating long-term enemies. The pivotal moment comes during Tyrion's trial by combat, when the Mountain fights as Cersei's champion against Oberyn Martell. His gruesome killing of Oberyn, crushing his skull with his bare hands after admitting to raping and murdering Elia, not only condemns Tyrion but solidifies Dorne's hatred of the Lannisters. This leads directly to Myrcella's murder by the Sand Snakes and Dorne's eventual support for Daenerys. Even after his death and resurrection as Sir Robert Strong, the Mountain continues to represent the Lannisters' reliance on brute force rather than political acumen. As Cersei's silent bodyguard, he allows her to act with impunity, removing any restraint she might have felt without his protection. This emboldens her to make increasingly reckless decisions, accelerating House Lannister's downfall. The Mountain's final confrontation with his brother, the Hound, in Clegane Bowl symbolically represents the self-destructive nature of the Lannisters' approach to power. Both brothers die in fire, the same fire that Cersei's stubbornness has brought to King's Landing. Their mutual destruction mirrors the way House Lannister's own violence ultimately returns to consume them. By relying on monsters like the Mountain, the Lannisters created a legacy of fear rather than respect. As Tyrion later observes to Jon Snow, fear is all Cersei has, fear and shame. When that fear was no longer enough to control their enemies, House Lannister found itself without allies, surrounded by those seeking vengeance for the Mountain's atrocities. Cersei's political miscalculations. I choose violence. Cersei Lannister's rise to power after Tywin's death accelerated House Lannister's downfall through a series of catastrophic political miscalculations that alienated allies and strengthened enemies. Unlike her father, who understood the balance between fear and pragmatism, Cersei relied almost exclusively on intimidation and revenge. Her first major miscalculation comes when she restores the Faith Militant to avoid paying the crown's debts to the Faith. This decision backfires spectacularly when the High Sparrow arrests her for adultery and forces her to undergo the Walk of Atonement. What makes Cersei's leadership so destructive to House Lannister is her inability to distinguish between short-term vengeance and long-term strategy. After her humiliation by the Faith, she responds by destroying the Sept of Baelor with wildfire, killing the High Sparrow, Margaery Tyrell, and many others. While this eliminates her immediate enemies, it also destroys the Lannister-Tyrell alliance that had been crucial to their power. The consequences are immediate and severe. Olenna Tyrell, the last of her house, allies with Daenerys and tells her to be a dragon, advice that will eventually lead to King's Landing's destruction. The people of King's Landing, already suffering under Lannister rule, now fear Cersei as a mass murderer rather than respecting her as a queen. And her son Tommen, horrified by his wife's death, commits suicide, ending the Baratheon Lannister dynasty Cersei had fought so hard to establish. Cersei's most significant political failure is her decision to betray Jon and Daenerys after agreeing to a truce to fight the White Walkers. By refusing to send Lannister forces north and instead hiring the Golden Company to strengthen her position, she not only weakens humanity's defense against the dead, but ensures that the victors will return with a personal grudge against her. As Jaime tells her when he abandons her, this goes beyond loyalty. This is about survival. Even when faced with Daenerys' overwhelming military advantage, 2 dragons and the combined forces of the North, Unsullied and Dothraki, Cersei refuses to surrender. Her stubbornness, born from a lifetime of fighting for power, leads directly to the destruction of King's Landing and her own death beneath the Red Keep. As she tells Ned Stark in Season 1, "When you play the Game of Thrones, you win or you die." In the end, her inability to recognize when the game was lost proved fatal. The irony of Cersei's rule is that in trying to secure House Lannister's power, she destroyed the very things that made that power possible: their wealth, their alliances, and their political legitimacy. By the time she dies in Jaime's arms, House Lannister has been reduced from ruling a continent to a queen hiding in a collapsing castle, abandoned by all but her twin brother. The depletion of Lannister gold. The gold mines of Casterly Rock ran dry 3 years ago. This shocking revelation from Tywin Lannister to Cersei in Season 4 exposed a critical weakness behind House Lannister's facade of unlimited wealth, a weakness that would contribute significantly to their downfall. The Lannister reputation for wealth was so fundamental to their power that their unofficial motto, "A Lannister always pays his debts," was known throughout Westeros and Essos. This reputation allowed them to borrow vast sums from the Iron Bank of Braavos, hire sellswords like Bronn, and maintain the largest army in the Seven Kingdoms. But without the gold mines that were the source of this wealth, their position became increasingly precarious. What makes this financial depletion so significant is how it forced the Lannisters to make desperate moves to maintain their position. They become dependent on the Tyrells' agricultural wealth, putting them in a vulnerable position that Cersei resents. When she eventually destroys this alliance by killing Margaery and Mace Tyrell, she eliminates their financial lifeline just when they need it most. The consequences become clear in Season 7, when Cersei struggles to pay back the crown's debts to the Iron Bank. As Tycho Nestoris reminds her, the Iron Bank is not a charity. To secure further loans, she needs to repay what they already owe, leading to the desperate gambit of attacking Highgarden to seize the Tyrell gold. While temporarily successful, this move further isolates House Lannister politically. By the final season, the financial strain is evident in Cersei's reliance on the Golden Company, sellswords hired with money she can ill afford to spend. When these expensive mercenaries are easily destroyed by Drogon in a single attack, it represents the final failure of the Lannister strategy of using gold to solve their problems. The depletion of Lannister gold serves as a powerful metaphor for the family's decline. Beneath the golden armor and crimson banners, the substance of their power had been hollowed out. As Tyrion tells Daenerys, Cersei controls fewer than half the Seven Kingdoms. The lords of Westeros despise her. Without their legendary wealth to back up their threats and promises, House Lannister's influence rapidly diminished. This financial collapse represents one of the most realistic aspects of House Lannister's fall. Throughout history, great houses and empires have often appeared strongest just before their collapse, maintaining an expensive facade of power while their foundations crumble. The Lannisters' inability to adapt to their new financial reality, to live within their means rather than borrowing against an increasingly uncertain future, accelerated their downfall. Jaime's divided loyalties. The things I do for love. Jaime Lannister's journey from villain to anti-hero represents one of Game of Thrones' most complex character arcs, and his divided loyalties between his family and his personal honor played a crucial role in House Lannister's fall. When we first meet Jaime, he seems the perfect Lannister, handsome, arrogant, and willing to push a child from a tower to protect his family's secrets. But the loss of his sword hand in Season 3 begins a transformation that forces him to reconsider his identity and loyalties. As he tells Brienne, "I was that hand." What makes Jaime's character so pivotal to the Lannisters' downfall is how his growing conscience pulls him away from his family's more ruthless actions. After returning to King's Landing, he increasingly finds himself at odds with Cersei's decisions, opposing her torture of Ellaria Sand, questioning her betrayal of the truce with Daenerys, and ultimately abandoning her to fight for the living against the White Walkers. The most significant moment in Jaime's journey comes when he chooses to leave Cersei at the end of Season 7, telling her, "I pledge to ride north. I intend to honor that pledge." This decision marks the first time Jaime chooses his personal honor over his loyalty to Cersei, depriving House Lannister of one of its most capable military commanders at a critical moment. Jaime's divided loyalties extend beyond his relationship with Cersei. His respect for Brienne of Tarth, his complicated feelings toward Tyrion, and his growing recognition of the damage his family has caused all pull him in different directions. As he tells Edmure Tully, "I love Cersei, my sister, my lover, the mother of my children, the things we do for love." The tragedy of Jaime's character is that despite his growth and attempts to be honorable, he ultimately cannot escape his attachment to Cersei. His decision to return to her in Season 8, abandoning Brienne and his new life in the North, represents both his personal failure and a critical blow to House Lannister's future. Rather than helping to rebuild his house after the war, he dies with Cersei beneath the Red Keep, ending the possibility of a Lannister restoration under his leadership. Jaime's final choice, to die with Cersei rather than live without her, encapsulates the fatal flaw at the heart of House Lannister: their inability to put anything, even survival, above their own family bonds. As Tywin once said, the house that puts family first will always defeat the house that puts the interests of its individual members first. Ironically, it was this very family-first mentality, taken to its extreme in Jaime and Cersei's relationship, that contributed to their house's destruction. Tyrion's defection. I am the god of tits and wine. Tyrion Lannister's journey from the black sheep of House Lannister to Hand of the Queen to Daenerys Targaryen represents perhaps the most significant individual factor in his family's downfall. Despite being the most politically talented of Tywin's children, Tyrion was consistently underestimated and mistreated by his family. His brief tenure as Hand of the King during the Battle of Blackwater demonstrated his capabilities, yet he received no recognition, only a facial scar and removal from office once Tywin returned to King's Landing. What makes Tyrion's defection so devastating to House Lannister is that it gives their enemies something they previously lacked: intimate knowledge of Lannister psychology, defenses, and weaknesses. As Tyrion tells Daenerys, "I know my family, I know how they think, I know their strengths and weaknesses." This insider knowledge proves crucial when planning the attack on Casterly Rock and later King's Landing. The pivotal moment comes after Tyrion's trial for Joffrey's murder, when he discovers Shae in his father's bed and subsequently kills both her and Tywin. This act of patricide removes House Lannister's greatest strategic mind, while simultaneously providing their enemies with his second greatest strategic mind. As Varys tells Tyrion when helping him escape, "You're the greatest asset and the greatest liability to your family." Tyrion's value to Daenerys extends beyond military strategy. As someone born into the highest echelons of Westerosi society, he provides legitimacy to her claim and helps her understand the political landscape she hopes to rule. His advice to attack Casterly Rock, secure alliances with Dorne and the Reach, and initially avoid directly attacking King's Landing creates a stranglehold on Cersei's position that would have succeeded if fully implemented. Perhaps most significantly, Tyrion's defection represents a moral judgment on House Lannister itself. As the character with whom many viewers most identify, his rejection of his family's values in favor of Daenerys's initially more idealistic vision suggests that House Lannister has lost any claim to the moral high ground. As he tells Jon Snow, I believe in our queen. She's going to make the world a better place. The irony of Tyrion's story is that despite escaping his family, he cannot escape their influence on his character. His trust in Cersei's promise to send troops north proves naive. His attempts to restrain Daenerys' worst impulses ultimately fail. And in the end, he finds himself once again a prisoner awaiting execution, this time for betraying his queen rather than his family. Yet Tyrion survives where his siblings do not, and in the final episode, he helps establish a new system of governance for Westeros. His final position as Hand to King Bran represents both his personal redemption and the final transformation of Lannister power, from the ruthless accumulation of wealth and influence to a more thoughtful approach to leadership. As he tells the council, "What unites people? Armies, gold, flags, stories. There's nothing in the world more powerful than a good story." Tyrion's journey from Lannister outcast to the last significant Lannister standing completes the fall of his house as we knew it. While he may carry the name, the Lannister legacy of intimidation, wealth, and family above all has been replaced by something very different, a recognition that power should serve the realm rather than the other way around. The prophecy of Maggy the Frog. Queen you shall be until there comes another, younger and more beautiful, to cast you down and take all that you hold dear. This prophecy, delivered to a young Cersei Lannister by the fortune-teller Maggy the Frog, haunted her throughout her life and drove many of the decisions that accelerated House Lannister's downfall. The prophecy continues with an even more devastating prediction. "And when your tears have drowned you, the Valonqar, High Valyrian for little brother, shall wrap his hands about your pale white throat and choke the life from you." Cersei interprets this as meaning Tyrion will kill her, fueling her lifelong hatred of her younger brother. What makes this prophecy so significant to the Lannisters' fall is how it shapes Cersei's paranoia and decision-making. Her fear of being replaced by a younger, more beautiful queen leads her to target Margaery Tyrell, destroying a crucial alliance. Her terror of Tyrion as the Valonqar prevents any reconciliation with her brother, pushing him firmly into Daenerys' camp. And her certainty that all her children will die, gold shall be their crowns, and gold their shrouds, creates a fatalistic recklessness in her actions. The prophecy becomes a self-fulfilling one. By trying to prevent Margaery from replacing her, Cersei accelerates her own downfall. By treating Tyrion as an enemy, she creates one. And by acting as though her children are doomed, she makes decisions that contribute to their deaths, particularly Tommen's suicide after she destroys the Sept of Baelor. Ironically, the prophecy's prediction about the Valonqar may have been fulfilled not by Tyrion but by Jaime, also her younger brother, by minutes, whose hands are around her as they die together beneath the Red Keep. This twist highlights the tragedy of Cersei's life. Her obsession with one interpretation of the prophecy blinded her to other possibilities and drove her to actions that ensured its fulfillment. The prophecy represents the role of fate in House Lannister's fall, the sense that despite their wealth and power, certain outcomes were inevitable. As Jaime tells Edmure Tully, "The Tullys, the Starks, the Lannisters, we're all just spokes on a wheel. This one's on top, then that one's on top, and on it spins." The prophecy suggests that the Lannisters' turn at the top was always destined to end. By the series finale, every element of Maggy's prophecy has come true. Cersei's children are dead, she has been replaced by Daenerys, and arguably Sansa in the north, and she dies with her brother's hands around her. The fulfillment of this prophecy marks the completion of House Lannister's fall from power, suggesting that even the mightiest houses cannot escape their fated end. The consequences of incest. Jaime and I are more than brother and sister. We shared a womb. We came into this world together. We belong together. The incestuous relationship between Cersei and Jaime Lannister created the spark that ignited the War of the Five Kings and ultimately led to their house's destruction. When Bran Stark discovers Cersei and Jaime together at Winterfell in the very first episode, Jaime's decision to push him from the tower sets in motion a chain of events that leads directly to conflict between the Starks and Lannisters. This initial act of violence to protect their secret establishes a pattern that will repeat throughout the series. The Lannisters willing to do anything to hide the truth about their children's parentage. What makes this incestuous relationship so devastating to House Lannister is not just the social taboo, but its political consequences. Cersei's children, Joffrey, Myrcella, and Tommen, are presented as Robert Baratheon's heirs but are actually born of incest. When this truth begins to spread, first through Jon Arryn's investigation and later Ned Stark's, it undermines the very legitimacy of the Lannister claim to power. The most significant moment comes when Ned confronts Cersei with his knowledge of her children's true parentage. Rather than fleeing as he suggests, she orchestrates Robert's death and Ned's arrest, escalating what might have been a scandal into a full-blown civil war. As she tells Ned, "When you play the Game of Thrones, you win or you die. There is no middle ground." Beyond the political ramifications, the Lannister incest has psychological consequences that contribute to their downfall. Joffrey's sadistic tendencies may be partly attributed to his incestuous origins, creating a king so cruel that he unites enemies against House Lannister. Cersei and Jaime's unhealthy codependence prevents either from forming alliances through marriage that might have strengthened their position, and their need to keep their relationship secret creates a culture of lies that infects all their political dealings. The relationship also represents the Lannisters' fatal flaw, their inability to look beyond their own family. As Tywin tells Jaime, your sister has become consumed with the idea that her enemies will take her down. This inward focus blinds them to larger threats and prevents them from forming genuine alliances based on mutual interest rather than fear or manipulation. By the series' end, the consequences of this incestuous relationship have destroyed House Lannister. Cersei and Jaime die together beneath the Red Keep, their children are all dead, and their legacy is in ruins. Their relationship, which they believed made them stronger, we're the only two people in the world, Cersei tells Jaime, ultimately proved to be the weakness that brought down their house. These 8 factors combined to transform House Lannister from the most powerful family in Westeros to a cautionary tale about the dangers of putting family above all else. From Tywin's dysfunctional parenting to Cersei's political miscalculations, from the depletion of their gold mines to the consequences of Jaime and Cersei's incest, the Lannisters created the conditions for their own downfall. What makes their fall so compelling isn't just its scale, but its inevitability. Despite their wealth, intelligence, and ruthlessness, the Lannisters could not escape the consequences of their actions. As Tyrion tells Jon Snow after killing Tywin, "I killed my father. He was going to execute me for a crime I didn't commit. And he was fucking the woman I loved." The Lannister legacy, which Tywin worked so hard to secure, ultimately amounted to little. Their gold mines ran dry, their castle fell with barely a fight, their armies were destroyed. And of Tywin's 3 children, only Tyrion survived, the son he rejected, now serving a Stark king rather than continuing the Lannister dynasty. Perhaps the most fitting epitaph for House Lannister comes from Olenna Tyrell's final words to Jaime before her death. "I want her to know it was me." The enemies the Lannisters made through their cruelty and arrogance ultimately brought them down, proving that even the richest house in Westeros couldn't afford the price of too many enemies. If you enjoyed this breakdown of House Lannister's fall, hit that like button and subscribe to Explainified for more deep dives into your favorite shows. Let me know in the comments which aspect of the Lannisters' downfall you found most satisfying, or if there's another Game of Thrones house you'd like me to explain next. Thanks for watching, and remember, a Lannister always pays his debts one way or another.